Hi, Trail Network podcast family. I am your host today, Katie Asmuth, and today I interview Mary Denholm, who is the Leadville 100 champion. She was 16 minutes off Ann Trason's 30-year course record at Leadville. Incredible debut 100 performance. This interview is jam-packed with gems I know you're going to enjoy, whether you are a new runner or a veteran. She has a lot of wisdom to share upon us. I hope you enjoy this one. Mary Denholm, welcome to the Trail Network podcast. How are you feeling today?
Good morning, Katie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm recovering. I feel good. Excited to be here. Thank you for taking the time to talk with me.
Okay, we cannot wait to dive in. But I will say, if you didn't hear the news, if you aren't on social media and you didn't know what Mary Denholm just did, she is the Leadville 100 champion. She set the second fastest time in history in 18:23:54, only 16 minutes off a 30-year record by Ann Trason. Really impressive for your 100-mile debut. How'd you do that? I can't wait to dive in more. Okay, Mary, where are you talking to us from now?
I live in Erie, Colorado, and I am home now.
You are home now. Okay, great. All right, so let's talk about this a little bit. We have never met personally, so, but I've read a lot about you and kind of want to, before we get into the kind of nitty gritty about Leadville, because I do want to talk about the race, I want to talk about your background and how you got into running initially. And then I know that you were originally a road runner and now you've kind of transitioned to trail. So if you could walk us through, what brought you to running initially and why you made that transition to trail.
Sure. So I ran cross country only. I never ran track in high school, and I did ultimately run in college, but I loved cross country. I guess that's technically where it started, right? Running cross country trails. But I was really into alpine ski racing. I grew up splitting time between Maryland and Vermont, actually. And so my goal in high school was to race Division I for skiing and not Nordic. I mean, alpine, very different.
Very different.
And so I went to a ski academy in high school. I transferred up for the winter months in high school. And that experience is what taught me to be a structured athlete, because our entire day was built around skiing in the morning, classes in the afternoon, lifting, tuning our skis, going to bed, doing it all over again, racing on the weekends. And so I did race D1 in college. St. Michael's College is where I went. And at the last minute, I did decide to run cross country, and it was Division II for all other sports, since they were historically Division I for skiing in New England. Kind of an interesting way to have one D1 sport and the rest D2. But I did run all 4 years, and it's in high school you can get away with not really running in the off season and showing up to the fall and still being able to compete. Or when I got to college, it wasn't that way. My freshman year, I was pretty out of shape, but I said, if you're going to do cross country, you're going to do it right, Mary, and you're going to run in the off season. And so I was able to get back to that place of fitness that I was in high school and then surpass it. And I was ultimately the 2008 Vermont State champ, which did combine Division I, II, and III schools. I then didn't run for 6 years. I went to law school. I was a lawyer, committed 10 years to that career. I started running again after I was a lawyer. But 6 years, I literally didn't run. When I started back running, everything hurt. And I was I get why people hate running because as an adult, when you're starting from zero and you haven't been a fitnessing human for 6 years, it's humbling. And so I started back with road marathon in 2015. And since 2015, I've just been chipping away at my road PRs, and it wasn't always a straight line of success as these things go, but I've taken my road marathon time. My first one I did in college, and my college coach was like, please don't do that again. Just like wait until after college when you're not doing like 5K, 6K things. But I ran a 3:39 in college in 2006. I was 19 years old, my first one. And I remember when I did it, I was like, bucket list, like people race this. Like I just was happy to finish. Like that was hard. So that was Vermont City Marathon in 2006. Didn't do another one until 2015. I ran a 3:03. And then from there, I just like chipped away over the years and did get my PR down to 2:36 this past fall at CIM in 2023. And my intention was to always come to ultra. I've been waiting to live in a place where I could do it the way I wanted to have better work-life balance. And it's taken me until year 37 to be able to like feel like I could do it the way I wanted to. Like I'm a very like, I want to do things right, be all in on something and not feel like I'm half-assing something. And so I had some road goals that I wanted to accomplish first, and I did that. And my intention was always in 2024, whether I qualified for trials last year, and I did at CIM, to roll that fitness into ultra. And kind of a step back is I started running like mountain trail like back in 2020. I had lived in Flagstaff. And so
while training for the road,
well, there was kind of that like COVID pause, right? Where like not much was happening. I had raced the trials in 2020, and then I had left law and I was working in marketing, and I was working for a marketing agency actually. So I worked in marketing for about 4 years after leaving law, and I had followed that career to Flagstaff, and I lived there for a little over a year. And I have to thank the ladies of Flagstaff, the trail ladies of Flagstaff, who welcomed me, were so patient when I was finding my trail footing back in 2020. And I mean, like, I didn't understand that like people run in the Grand Canyon. And I remember they took me on my first Grand Canyon run, and I was like so humbled by that experience. And so in my time in living in Flagstaff, my closest friends there was like a 5-woman group of friends who still to this day are some of my closest friends in the running world. 2 of them were out helping me this weekend, which just was so special for my first 100. So
what are their names? Give them a shout out.
Lindsay McDonald and Courtney Barnes. They were my pacers this weekend. Jess Brazo, Heidi Nadal, Alex Potter, like that group of women I'm still very close with. And those were my people when I lived in Flagstaff who really like brought me into like mountain running, there's like trail running. There's like a wide definition of that, right? I'm talking like the real mountainous runs, like Humphreys, rim to rim, rim to rim to rim. I did both of those when I lived in Flagstaff back in 2020 and 2021. And so I've been running trail for fun and as part of training because it makes me a better road marathoner, honestly, to do the trail runs. And like last summer, for example, I was in Telluride, Ouray, Silverton for like almost a full month. And then when I got back from that, my fall training was like killer. I was in such good shape from spending a lot of time running a lot of vert. And so over the past 4 years, I've run trail for fun because it makes me the most happy. I love spending the big days with friends, and it has helped my road fitness too. So in coming over, like, I would say like officially finally since February, I had an appreciation from like 4 years of like experience with friends and also crewing and pacing these races. I've coached up to 100 miles before I actually raced 100 miles. So I've had an appreciation for like what this is like and what it takes and what the training needs to look like to be successful in this. And in coming over in February because of the past 4 years.
Okay, there's so much to dive into there. First, I'm really curious about your transition from being an attorney to marketing. Then now you're a full-time coach, I believe.
Correct. Yes.
What was going on in your life during that time that you made that jump to go off on your own and to be a coach?
Sure. So I started coaching part-time as like a passion side job, if you will. Like it's never felt like work to me because I love it so much. I started in 2018. I was on my own. I was coaching 10, 15 people, just, like not through a coaching company. In 2020, I started coaching for Lift, Run, Perform. So I'm essentially like an independent contractor for them. And the reason I wanted to start working for a coaching company was, and of course the right one, the right fit for me, is to have community, strength, all the things that I can't as an individual provide. I'm not a strength coach, I'm a run coach, but I know how important strength is. I know people want community. So, that was the right fit for me. And then I wanted to focus my time on coaching, not like marketing that I'm a coach. And so I was looking to coach more people. And so that was the right fit for me. And so through my time, the end of my time as a lawyer, beginning of my switch to marketing, I was always coaching along the way. And I was a trial attorney. I love the intellectual idea of law. I still have friends in law, love talking about it. Supreme Court cases come out, we're talking about it. I loved the action of being in a courtroom, but I found it exhausting because I was a criminal defense attorney and I was also a prosecutor. And it's a sad place. It's like either side. Like, unfortunately, we live in a society where we very much need both sides. Like, we need good defense attorneys, we need good prosecutors. And either side you're on, there's a tragedy happening, right? Because it's like something bad has happened to someone. You can't change that. They have to testify and relive it. That's terrible. On the other side, you have someone who's charged with doing something, that if they get convicted of it, they may go to jail. Jail's a terrible place. But you also can understand why someone was in this bad situation and ended up doing what they did, background, life experiences, all of this. So there's a ton of sadness and sympathy on both sides. And so for me, because I did both, I just felt it was very tragic and there's not a happy ending. I'm not celebrating when someone goes to jail. I'm not celebrating when someone's been convicted. And so for me, I have a competitive side, but I felt like law was very much in conflict with who I am as a person, which is a more collaborative, supportive, team-oriented individual. And so being in a courtroom fighting all the time really drained me as a human, in addition to seeing the tragedy. And I had a lot of trouble separating what happened at work from my home life. I always carry it with me. Been accused of caring too much. It's I can't just turn it off and leave it at work. And so when I left law, I went into marketing, and that was a really good fit for me as a personality because I'm working with others in a collaborative environment. I'm helping a business market themselves to their consumer. So it's I'm in it with this person, this business, helping them help themselves. Mm-hmm. So I felt much more aligned with that career. That's why I feel very aligned and I'm living my true nature as a run coach, because I get to help someone achieve their goals. And I know how hard this sport is. I know what it's like to balance high level running with a very demanding career. I actually coach a lot of lawyers.
Feels
I understand.
Lawyers in medicine. It feels like there's a lot of trail runners that fit the mold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
High achievers,
and it's
very motivated people.
I know what it's like. Yeah. And like, when I was a lawyer, like I would wake up at 4 and I'd be out the door at 4:30 because if I didn't get my run in early, it might not happen because I could be stuck waiting for a jury to come back. And it's like, well, sometimes in Maryland, like we would make them keep deliberating and they'd be out till like 10 at night. And it's like, I can't just disappear and run. Like if the jury has a question, I have to be back in the courtroom in like 2 minutes. So it's like, I'm just stuck. But and to this day, I still wake up at like 4 because I just think that lifestyle just like got like ingrained in me to wake up at 4 and get your work done. But yeah, I ended up leaning into full-time coaching back in 2022. So I've been doing it for 2 years now. And honestly, what precipitated it was my father had passed away. And I was living in California. My mom was in Maryland and he was her life partner of 42 years. I realized that, she needed a lot of help through this life transition. And I was just like, you know what? There's stuff more important than like career goals or a job title. And like, I was tired of living just like far away from my family. And she wanted to move to be near me after my dad had passed away. And I was like, well, wait a second. Like, I'm not going to stay here. So like, it would not be right to have her like move across the country. And then like, I knew I was going to be leaving and moving somewhere else eventually. And my sister was in Colorado and I was like, you know what, let's all just like go to Colorado. And so I'd left my job to be able to help her like go through this like major life transition, including selling her house that she had lived in since like 1987. And so I was like, at that point I was coaching enough people that when I like crunched the numbers, I was like, I can support myself briefly with this and then like figure out what my next steps are. But like, what job is going to give me like 3 to 4 weeks off to like really help my mom?
Yeah.
And so I was like, I'm just going to like take a beat for a minute and like figure out what my next move is. And I thought about going back to marketing because like I really did love marketing. But when I thought about what had brought me the most joy over the past few years, it was coaching. And so I said, you know what? And like the demand was there. I was turning away business because I was like, I can't like I need to be responsive to people. Like I very much have like a same day policy of like Monday through Friday, like I'm getting back to you that day. And so it's like, I couldn't take on more than a certain number when I was working full time in marketing and also coaching. And so I was turning away business and I was like, I wonder if that could support me, what that would look like. And, the answer was yes when I leaned into it in the fall of 2022. So that's what I do full time. And it's truly the best job to just like help. And like, I coach a wide range of runners, like people who are just starting running down to like some very accomplished road and trail athletes. And so, and everything in between, I love the variety. And like, it truly is such a privilege to help people find their way to this sport, achieve their goals in the sport. And like, I'm so glad that I actually took a chance on doing it full time. And it had never occurred to me until my family was going through this life transition to try it out. But I totally believe that things happen when they're meant to, and to just trust your life journey, like with all things. I've just been through, enough, and I went through a divorce as well. I was, with my partner previously for 11 years, and going through that experience in addition to all this other stuff, it's like, running is there for you and it's a staple, but like at the end of the day, like things just work out long term. I truly believe that, like they're supposed to.
Yeah, it sounds like you did a lot of soul searching during that time, and you came out the other side finding the thing that has brought you the most joy. And I think it's interesting that now you have transitioned from road to trail as a trail runner, and the people listening to this podcast are mostly trail runners. And I'm curious about a couple of things. You had mentioned that you were kind of exposed to that in Flagstaff, and then you knew it brought you a lot of joy, but it was really for training. And I thought it was interesting that you commented that you thought trail made you a stronger road runner. And I feel like that kind of switches what people usually think. Like usually it's like the speed work, the road running is going to help you be a faster, stronger trail runner. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to that and how you thought that trail kind of propelled you in your road running career.
Sure. I think, I know from being a coach that I encourage all my athletes to do strength. I'm like, you got to do your strength 2 days a week. Like, it's more important than that, extra run of the week. Like, if you have to decide, it's the strength is most important. And I can get into a little bit about that, why it became so important for me personally. It was due to an injury, but I think there's a very not apprehensive. It's just I don't think a lot of road runners will prioritize strength training and how that can help you. And mountain runs, vert runs, are a cardio meets strength experience, right? It takes a ton of strength to be able to run up and down a mountain. And that strength makes you a faster runner. I have always found that, the vert runs translate to road speed, in my opinion. They're not at odds with each other. And, in going through training cycles for ultra, I'm running my road workouts as fast or faster as when I was training for trials. So it's they both apply, in my opinion. They complement each other. And so I encourage my road runners to get out on some trails. And I'm when you first do it, it's super humbling. You don't know how to pace it and you're sore for days, but your body adapts. And so, what I've found is it's also really good to keep you healthier too. It works all the stabilizer muscles that just running straight on a flat road or even a gentle rolling road. It's not the same as your body needing to adapt and work through terrain on a trail. So I think it not only helps you be a stronger and faster runner, but I think it helps you be a healthier runner too. But you still do need to do strength. You can't be oh, I'm running these mountain trails, and so that's my strength training. It's no, you still need to go to the gym.
I love that. Can you talk to me a little bit about the mental side of marathon versus ultra running and how you feel both may complement each other?
They both require patience. You have to be patient. You cannot just feel you're sending it right away. And I've always found that, I have a really good internal pace effort meter. And I think that does come from road because, I've learned to gauge my effort for these obviously shorter, briefer race distances, but it still applies to ultra. You don't want to feel you're hitting that line. You want that to feel even longer, but with road marathon, for example, I don't want to feel I'm riding that line until the last 10K of the race. And so if I feel that line earlier, I pull back. And so I think patience is a huge part of this, to not go out too fast, to make sure you're, running the right effort from the beginning. So that's where I think they very much align.
It's interesting. You mentioned something that about how you really wanted to always do ultra, that was sort of the underlying goal, even when you were getting her training for your, DOTQ'd twice, I believe, right? Last being in CAM last year. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit to that. Were you hanging up the road shoes and saying, all right, I'm going full-time trail? Is this something that you're going to kind of straddle both road and trail together? It sounds like you think they both complement each other. I'm just curious about that transition from road to trail, and if that your trail now full time.
I would say that we never know, right? What the future will hold. So I would say that I see myself in the future as being predominantly a trail like ultra runner. Like I just love this so much. I've wanted to do this training and to really explore like everything it has to offer. You know, from like I want to do a VK to I'm looking forward to doing another 100 and like everything in between.
She's saying this a
So
couple days after Leadville to remind our audience. That's impressive. Most people that have run 100 understand that usually a couple days after your first 100-miler, you are pretty cooked. So that's impressive. You're already thinking about the next.
well, I am more sore than I've been from any race I've done in the last few years. Like it is a load physically and mentally, but I am, and like, I'm not doing one again this year, but like next year, I do want to do one in 2025. So, no, I mean, I really do see myself like, I am so happy to be here, to be doing this finally, like for real, that this is what I see myself doing predominantly. But, you know, I was intentional in like who I wanted to hire to coach me for Ultra, in that I wanted someone who, if I do want to go back and go after OTQ in 2028, I'm not like switching coaches. Like I wanted to find a long-term fit, and I wanted someone who would help me keep my road speed while training for ultras, because that is a huge differentiator to be able to have that fitness and to have that turnover. So, you know, I do, even if I said, you know what, you know, like the 2028 OTQ goal just like doesn't like, it's not important to me anymore. I still find a ton of value in racing a road half, a road marathon, because, you know, one of the things that I kept telling myself when I didn't have the work-life balance that I have now, and I didn't live in a place where I could like train on the trails the way I wanted to, was everything you're doing on the roads is going to help you when you go to trail. Like getting my road marathon down, getting my threshold down, like all of that. I was like, and while there are different skill sets that I need to work on with ultra, with mountain racing, like, and I'm still working on like not a great descender. Need to work on that. Like I need to, I'm an alpine ski racer formerly. Like I should be able to send it on these trails and like I'm not, but like, you know, it's like there's a lot of skill sets that you still will always be working on, but that road speed is going to help. And so I think they all come together. And so even if I didn't like, I didn't want to go for that like particular one goal in road marathoning, you know, I still think there's value in doing one like in a build towards like a 50 mile or 100K. I like not using it as a training run, like using it like as a race.
This episode is brought to you by Osprey. I see Osprey everywhere, as I'm sure you do too. Whether it's luggage, kids' carriers, or running packs, Osprey is the one-stop shop for adventure. My current favorite for backpacking is the Aura LT50 for lighter weight, multi-day overnight trips where comfort and ventilation are critical. It has an anti-gravity suspension that delivers a weight-defying fit that seamlessly envelopes your back and hips. Talk about comfort. The pack also has easy-to-use side pockets, trekking pole attachment, and integrated rain cover. And it's made with recycled materials. Head over to osprey.com and click on their tool, Pack Finder, to find the perfect pack for you. And Matt Daniels is your coach, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
We've been together since February.
Okay. So you made the big jump. You OTQ'd at CAM, and then in February you were like, we're transitioning to trail. I want to talk a little bit about your goal towards Leadville, because that's why we're having this conversation, because you just won the Leadville 100. But I have a question real quick about the coaching, because coaching, two coaches were the Leadville champions, David Roach and yourself. I think it's really interesting that there's people that are coaches and kind of hang up their shoes themselves and really put everything into their athletes. And then others that are able to kind of dive into the experiences of their athletes and the strategies that their athletes and themselves are learning as they coach, and then also the science behind it. And I think it's really telling that we had two coaches win the Leadville 100. Yourself only 16 minutes off from the course record, David Roach breaking the course record, of course. So it is, I'm curious if you think that coaching has helped you in your running personally.
Yeah, it absolutely has. I mean, I say it all the time. I learn from everyone I coach. From someone who's just starting running to, the more experienced runners that, I've coached, including, um, you know, ultra runners who, like I said, I've coached to 100 miles before I did myself, just like David, like same thing, right? And so, I learn from all of them. We're an inspiration and motivation for each other. So, you know, coaching is just the greatest gift. It really is.
All right, let's dive into that though. What were some of the strategies that you think you were able to harvest as a coach that maybe you had one up on maybe some of your competitors, in the sense that you have experienced some of this 100-mile debut noise of like the things that have gone wrong for people, and how you were able to learn from that?
Yeah. And, I think a lot of that also comes from just being in the trail and ultra world as a friend to others, like crewing and supporting, like not only athletes that I've coached who have come out and like paced or crewed, but also like friends. And so all of that came together for me. It's like I've been a student of ultra for like 4 years without like having dove into it as much as I wanted to. And like during 2020, when I was living in Flagstaff, I actually, with a prior coach, had gone through training cycles, training for 50Ks, like that were happening supposedly in Arizona. They ended up getting canceled because of COVID. So like I had put in some training, but then ultimately wasn't able to like have the race experience, which is why I did rim to rim and rim to rim to rim back when I lived there. But getting back to my race, I would say, the number one thing I feel like I see all the time is people just going out too fast and blowing up in like this carnage, right? And then also fueling is huge. And also just knowing that like you're not going to have a perfect day. Like things are going to happen. It's way too long of a race to expect everything to go smoothly. Like I didn't have a perfect day. I had to problem solve out there, and I'm proud of how I stayed calm. Like the most important thing, stay calm. Like a lot of this stuff can be worked through. Sometimes you can't, and it is the day ends at some point earlier than you want it to, but staying calm, problem solving, like that goes a long way. This sport is so mental. Like, yes, it's physical. You need to be prepared for it. You need to put the training in, but like the mental comes along with the physical in training, right? You can start to see what's possible for yourself in training. Believing in yourself is so important. And it's not about, like, it's about being confident, not cocky. There's a difference. Like if you don't believe it for yourself, no one can help you achieve this. Like you have to believe in yourself. And so if you have a goal, like I'm very much of the mindset philosophy as an individual of I share my goal, I speak it into existence. If I fall short, I'm going to try again. But for me, that helps me believe in it. If someone, like a more nervous runner, right? And like confidence can come from just being an experienced athlete in the sport and knowing that like rough days happen for all of us. I mean, I DNF'd canyons this spring. We can talk about that a little more later. But like bad races happen. They don't define you. You have to have the memory of a goldfish, learn from it, move on. Same thing with the ones that go really well. Like we celebrate it, we move on. Like, what's next? And so really important, like if an athlete is a more nervous individual, don't share your goal. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you want to keep that to yourself. But for me as an athlete, like I'm very public and transparent about it. And like, it doesn't make me nervous to like share my journey. And that's actually why I started my Instagram years ago, was to be helpful to others, share my journey, the highs and the lows. And like, for me, sharing the lows, like that's life. Like, that's what happens. And then it's like, that keeps it real. And, I've shared publicly what I've gone through in my personal life that like made running hard for a period of time. Like, it didn't go well when I was going through a divorce. Like, separation and divorce is so stressful. Like, that impacts your running. But like, I've shared that because that's real. Like, we're not robots, we're humans.
You touched on so much in there I want to dive into. One of the things that you mentioned that I didn't want to forget to talk about was fueling, because I know that fueling is really important to you. I was reading that about 110 grams an hour, at least at one point in the race. But you haven't always been able to fuel that way, and you've worked on it. So I'm curious about your fueling strategy and what got you to perform to the degree you did.
Yeah. And I have Ultra to thank for this because, like I said, I've been a student of the sport for a very long time. And so, I started fueling like ultra runners in road marathon back in 2019. Before people were talking about 100 grams of carbs per hour, I was doing it. Like, when I qualified for my first trials in 2019, I looked back like this past year and I was like, I was doing that. Like, and no one was talking about it. And I wasn't even talking about it then, other than saying like, I used to have bad GI issues. I used to crash. I used to bonk. Like, I had like a 2-year period where like, I literally couldn't move my marathon PR forward. And it was so punishing. And I almost quit the sport because I was like, this is so much work to have it like not pay off. Like, this is so demoralizing. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I'm determined. Like, I can be stubborn. And like, I put myself through this because I was like, I'm gonna figure this out. So anyway, like when I qualified at CIM for the 2024 trials, I hit 114 grams of carbs per hour there in a road marathon.
Pioneer in the carb craze.
It gets better. I raced Houston half in January in my Build 4 trials. And I did 100 grams of carbs per hour there. And I ran like 114 flat. And like, people were like, no way. And I was like, yes way. And the way I did it was I just like slow fed myself gels every like half a mile. I was taking in like a third of a gel. You can.
Did you can at a like in a waist belt?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you can at threshold basically effort. You can take in gels. You just have to train yourself to be able to do it. So I felt very dialed with road marathon in cold weather. I am a very heat sensitive athlete and I could never understand why I was like I felt like I was so disproportionately bad. Like, my 3 worst races in the road marathon, I know we're going to get to trail in a moment, but this is an important part of the story. My 3 worst races since 2019 was Grandma's Marathon twice when it was 70 degrees and 100% humidity. And then trials was Orlando at 10 a.m. Like, we know how that went for like pretty much everyone. I did the heat training in the sauna. Like, I did all of that. I went down early, prepared. I still did not have a great day there at all. And so I was like, man, I'm just like not a good heat runner and I'm trying to do these things to like fix it. And I always found with road marathon, like I couldn't take in enough fluid to keep myself hydrated, even with personal hydration bottles on the course, because you're limited in like the size of them. Right. And so, I think if I did it again, I would have to just like carry handhelds and just like drink my way through these races, because what I found out, and I wish I had done this a long time ago, is I finally got a sweat test in May because I DNF'd canyons and I was doing, my 100 grams of carbs per hour. In training, I've done up to 130 grams of carbs per hour. So it's not like I'm like forcing the high end, right? And I was having a great race at Canyons 100K in April. I ultimately did DNF. And what happened to me could only really be described as a bonk, but it didn't make sense to me at the time because I was like, I'm fueling so well. Like, and I was drinking, but my electrolytes were off. And so I come to find out, and I had no expectation that I would be this like excessively sweaty human being because I never got like the sweat streaks or like I was never like salty after a run. And so my coach encouraged me to get a sweat test. And so I did, because like my brain was like messed up. I wasn't making
Kind
smart
of
decisions.
loopy.
And I was
Yep.
like,
Yep.
I was like out of it. I was like falling down all of a sudden. And I was like, what is going on? Because like my body was strong, cardiovascularly, I was fine. And I was like, I know I didn't go out too fast. Like, what is going on here? Like, why is this happening to me? And so I got the sweat test done. I had it done at Scratch here in Boulder. And as the result came in, they were like, oh. I was
Dun,
like,
dun,
what?
dun, dun.
Yeah, so 1242.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Yeah,
high. Okay.
I know. And I was like, what does this mean? And they were like, oh, the average person is like 800 or like whatever. And
Even
I was like,
less. Yeah. It's like
or
4 to
maybe
600.
600 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was like, they were like, so you need to take in like no less than 750 milligrams. Like, honestly, you need to be taking way more, but like that should be like your minimum. And at Canyons, I was taking maybe 200. And so like my transition and part of my growing pain and coming from marathon to ultra was like, I felt very dialed when it was like a cool marathon. And I said to them like, well, how has this not impacted me like more with road marathon? They were like, well, you're done in like 2.5 hours. So like your electrolytes, like you might feel like kind of bad at the end of the race and like after, but like it's not a long enough endurance event that like, when you get to those like 4, 5, 6, 10, 18-hour days, like your body is going to shut down on you. And that's like what happened at Canyons. And that explains why you like felt the way you did in your body. And so since then I was like, all right, I'm going to like get, dialed with this. And so to be able to like get my body used to metabolizing like that much sodium, I kind of had to back off my carbs briefly and then kind of like build everything back up. And so by the time I raced this summer, I did the Leadville Marathon, I did the Silver Rush 50, and then the Leadville 100. So I did the
Leadville
3.
Slam.
Yeah.
And I think you
apparently
set the
there was a
course
10K
record.
in there. I missed that.
Did you set the course record at Silver Rush? I believe you did.
Yeah. And actually they had interviewed me at the finish of the marathon. They thought it was a course record at first too. And if you look online, they had like 403 listed as like, if you Google it, it says 403 is the record. So everyone thought I had it, but then they found a record from 2008, I believe, where a woman had run 358 and I ran 359. And they were like, and one of the issues with the marathon is if it's a snowy year, they won't take you all the way up Mosquito Pass or Ball Mountain. And so they were like, we think it was the full course. We don't know, but like, because we can't confirm, we're not going to like call it a course record, but like it was second fastest at worst. So that race in particular changes often. So it's like hard for them to know like what year is what without like, having that like record. But yes, at Silver Rush, it was a course record. So by the time, what?
I was just going to say, during these races is when you were practicing your new fueling strategy. And it sounds like you were absolutely nailing it. So you're going into Leadville feeling ready, confident. You're looking at Ann Trason's course record from 30 years ago going, maybe I can do this. So I'm curious about your goals going into the race. I know you had the splits of Ann's, and what happened during the race, because you were hitting those splits for the first half. So let's walk through what happened and when you knew that course record was slowly out of reach.
Yeah. So, my coach, I got to give him credit. Matt told me like right away that it was in my range. And I mean, he said it for the marathon, he said it for the 50, like, he was like, as soon as I had entry to the 100, he was like, that's a really hard course record. It stood for 30 years, but he was like, I know you can do it. If you have the right day, I know you can do it. And at first I was like, okay, but he's been right about everything so far. So it's like, I trust this person so much. Right. And like, he's been a great fit for me from day one in February. And so as I was training up there, and like doing runs on sections of the course and seeing how I was feeling, like with what I was splitting, I started to know that I could do it. But I also knew I was going to need to have like, not an A day, like the A plus day. Like you need like almost like a flawless race to take down a course record like
goes
that.
into that, right? Where it
Yep.
depends. There's so many things that are out of your control that can affect that
Yeah.
day. Yeah. So continue.
So in going into the race, you know, and this is exactly what I said to anyone who asked me, because I had a lot of people ask me and I was like, first of all, thank you. Like, you know, she's such an accomplished runner. Like just even saying that you think that, or asking me if I'm going for it, or like encouraging me to go for it, like truly is such an honor and means so much. And like I just felt very like seen. I was just like, yes, I am very fit, but like, thank you. Like truly like an honor to just like have my name in the same sentence as her. And like, I'm new to this, like, so thank you. I never felt any pressure or expectation. I just felt like support. And so what I've said all along is, you know, my goal going into the race was, of course, it's my first 100-mile race. So like the process goals are so important. Like I want to go the distance. I want to have this experience. But I also wasn't going to like sandbag and be like, oh, you know, I hope I just finished. Like, you know, it's like, I also had performance goals that were important to me. And I did want to win the race. Like to me, winning was more important than the time goal. And so when I sat down to calculate splits, I did ultimately and I needed to give my crew like when to expect me. I gave them splits that would put me under 18 hours because I truly knew from having run on this course and like how my summer of racing went up there that I was likely going to be running around the course record like for a substantial part of the race. And when I looked at men, because there weren't any women's records to look at this from prior years, I looked at men who had run 17 and 18 hours over the past few years. And so I kind of looked at that and like the way the course runs is like it is more runnable. And then you have Hope Pass, which is like a huge slowdown for everyone because that's where all the vert is. And then it's like, how runnable can you be after that? So it is a positive split course for like pretty much everyone. Like, you know, you're going to like slow down. And what I saw was like most men in the 17 and 18 hour range ran anywhere from 5 to 6 hours in that 20-mile section of Twin Lakes to Hope to Winfield back to Twin. And so I knew there would be a big slowdown there. And so I had these splits calculated and I raced exactly the same way I did at Silver Rush 50, which was I gave these splits to my crew, but I ultimately was not tethered to my watch. And I said, the success of the day is not running this particular time. I'm giving this to you because I think that's where I'm going to be splitting. And I want you to be prepared for me to come through at these times. But I have to run my own race by effort. And if I don't run these splits, I'm not going to be upset. Like, I just need to run my own race by effort. And that's exactly what I did. The only time I looked at my watch is when it would like split a mile. And I was like, I mean, it's 11-minute mile. It's an 8-minute mile. Right. Like, who cares, right? Like, I'm not doing the math. Like, I was going to spend zero mental energy doing math in between the aid stations. I would like check in at the aid station and I was running them. Like, I was running them. I ran all my splits at Silver Rush 50 within a minute. Like,
wow.
I knew what I could do. That's there. Impressive. And I executed it.
Okay.
And I was doing that again. Every split I ran, and even when I hit Winfield, I was only like, I think 5 minutes off of what I had given my crew. It's when I came back up, that second time coming back up Hope is when I started to slip. And then I was okay with it. Like, I knew that could happen. And then especially because, as I've shared, and I know why the hot days are especially hard for me. And it's why topical cooling is so important for me. I have to drink my way through these races. Like, if push comes to shove, it's more important for me to get in the sodium than it is for me to get in the carbs. I still am very intentional about getting in the carbs, but like, because of my sweat loss, like now I know how important those things are. We were on it with the topical cooling at Silver Rush 50. I had a great day. On it here, what happened was when I went over Hope Pass down to Winfield, I had an ice bandana. My team cooled me down, and they even reminded me, they were like, keep it chill. This is going to be a hot climb. Like, just remember that, Mary. Like, and I had told them to remind me of that too. And so I felt great on the way up, still had ice. Coming back down, it's so hot and exposed on that second side. And so when you're coming back up from Winfield, it's the hardest climb because it's like the steepest. It's where you get a mile that has like over 1,000 feet of vert in it. And I was coming through at the hottest time of the day, which was like 1 to 2 p.m. It was 79 degrees. Thankfully, it's not humid, but we're higher up. So the sun feels like very intense. And I had to chill. Like, I had to allow myself, like, I felt like I could have moved better, and I was expecting to move better had it been like a cooler day. And so that's coming out of Winfield. That climb took me like 17 minutes longer than I expected. And they didn't have ice at Winfield. I was hoping they would, to like refill my ice bandana. And honestly, like, it was so hot for everyone. I can't believe they didn't have ice there, and you're not allowed to have crew. And so I stopped at like the creek crossings to like, put water on myself, like get my shirt wet. So like, I was very intentional about taking that time. When I got back to Twin Lakes, I was about 30 minutes off. Like, in that total section from Winfield to Twin Lakes again, I was about 30 minutes off where I thought I could be on like my best day. Yeah. And so that's like, I knew when I got to the top of Hope Pass, I was like, it'll be hard to make this up, but like, now is not the time to push. I need to just like get back to my crew, get cool, like, and so like I got back down to them and I said, like, it's been so hot, but like, I'm really proud of how I fueled through that section, and I like adjusted my pace, because like, if I had tried to force those splits or to make up that time, I could have really ruined the rest of my race. So I can have no regrets over how I handled that. But that is where I did slip from it. And then when I got my next 2 pacers, we actually made up time. I see your dog. We actually made up time. And so I was able to get back down to ultimately be 16 minutes off. And so I was running the splits I wanted to, or a little bit faster for some of those sections, which was great. So at the end of the day, I'm happy, I'm proud, I'm satisfied. Like, I cannot be upset about missing it by like 16 minutes, because I mean, I had so much more, like,
there's no,
it was very good.
Right.
Yeah.
You absolutely destroyed that course, especially as your first 100-mile debut. I mean, it's incredible. I am really curious if you could talk about your mindset when you found out that Winfield didn't have ice, and how that moment can make so many people spiral, and and that could ruin your race, really. Even just the knowledge of hoping for something at an aid station and then it's not there, and then you can kind of, your coping mechanisms are already out the window because you're exhausted, all these things. I'm curious of what happened when you found out that Winfield didn't have ice and how you held it together.
I mean, I was like, these are the circumstances. I just have to stay calm. If I allow myself to like, get upset about it, I'm just wasting energy. I'm wasting time. And that's something that I learned as a trial attorney, because, if I'm in front of a jury and like, I'm in criminal law, like sometimes my witness and my victim is like also a criminal, and like they're like not wanting to cooperate with me, and there's like Breaking Bad on the witness stand, and it's like I just have to like be stoic.
Right. Put emotions aside.
I cannot like let them know that like things are Breaking Bad, right? So it's like I feel like that's like a skill set that like I brought, is like I just like I'm very good at staying calm and not getting flustered about things, because at the end of the day, there's so much about life racing that like we can't control. You just have to adapt. And so I was like, okay, can you guys like pour water on me, help me cool down? So they did. They sprayed me with sunscreen. I was out of that aid station very quickly because there was like nothing they could like help me with other than like refilling. And I had, in that moment, I was kicking myself because I was like, you know what? I really needed a filter. Like I only had two handhelds coming back up, and that climb took more time than what I was supposed to be fueling with liquid, because like when it's that hot out, I honestly need more than one 500 milliliter bottle per hour. I need closer to two, and I only had two. And I actually ran into Zoe Brom, who ended up being second. She was fourth. We hit each other at a stream crossing, and she had a filter, and I was like, I should have brought a filter. Like, I'm such an idiot. Like, I didn't even think about it. Like, I wish I had brought a filter. And so we were like exchanging some words there, because I knew her before the race, and like I was like pouring water on myself, and I was like, they don't have ice. Be careful. Like, this section is so hot. And yeah, coming up, by the time I got to like Hopeless on the other side, I was so thirsty. And so that's like why I had to be controlled, is I was like, if you overexert yourself and you don't have enough fluids, you could literally ruin the rest of your race. And thankfully, Hopeless was like on it. They were like pouring water on me, like helping me like refill and stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just had to stay calm and adapt. I mean, that's what this is about. These longer distance races, like, they're not going to be perfect. And like, I had other stuff come up too during the day that I like overcame, but thankfully nothing was like major. I would describe it as like pretty de minimis as far as like what could go wrong. So I was like very grateful at like how I just like adjusted and like got through things. But yeah, I didn't have anything major happen, which is like very good.
Something I'm taking away from this conversation is focus over feeling, because I think that that's something you really portray during this race, and just kind of this way to stay calm and within the moment and not letting kind of emotion take over. And I think that's something that all trail runners can work on. And if you're really good at that, you're going to be good at ultra races.
Oh, yeah. You'll love this. Get this. So I had a fully charged headlamp, and it died on me at mile 10 in the dark.
Oh, no.
Yeah. That's how the day started. And I was like, what did you do? So I had the wherewithal while I was wearing this great like crop that has like storage like right here. And I had stuffed in that morning. I decided maybe I should carry a backup battery just in case. Right. I was like, all these races have you like Leadville doesn't have mandatory gear, but the ones that do often make you carry like a backup battery for a headlamp. And I was like, gosh, like what if that happened? And then it did. And I was like, what? And I know. So it started flashing on me, and I had two guys behind me. This was like 3 miles from May Queen, right? And so it's dark. It's turquoise lake. There's no moon out. It was like literally pitch black. And it starts flashing, and I go, oh my God, no way. And then it went out. And so I said to the guys behind me, can you go first? And I'm just going to like follow you. And so there was like, I was able to see dimly, but like when someone else's headlamp, it's like very focused, right? I was like following behind them, and I was able to get it to turn on to like the dimmest setting, which really wasn't helping. But the last 3 miles of turquoise is like kind of rocky. I don't consider it technical, but it is rocky. And I was like, if I fall and like damage my knee or something right now, I'm going to lose it. But I was like, you know what? You just need to stay calm, get to May Queen. Because I didn't want to like ask someone like, hey, would you mind like pausing and helping me like get this battery light out? Like, I wasn't going to do that. I was like, that's like such an annoying question. Everyone's trying to run this race. Like, I didn't want to ask someone to stop and help me. And so I got to May Queen, thankfully in one piece. I've never been more relieved to see asphalt. Like, I was like, thank goodness. And so I changed out the battery there. But there's just an example. There's just an example of like, you can be prepared and like technology fail on you, and like you just have to stay calm. And like got over it. Like, it's like things are gonna happen to you out there, and like it was charged. Trust me, it was charged. So like, why was it dying like a little over an hour into the race? Like, it should be lasting hours. But like if you don't stay calm, like because I started to get upset, and I could feel my heart rate like getting upset, because I was like this is not what I wanted to have happen. And like, as runners, we are tending to be type A people, but like, we have to be adaptable. We can't just like expect things to go smoothly.
Yeah, that's shocking that you actually had the battery. I mean, that to me is what you do, and when it's not your first 100 miler, and you came out of that like, I'm sure that had to give you a little boost in your step. Like, I was prepared, I did this, I'm ready to rock. Versus that could have been your entire race. So, really
Yeah.
impressive. I have one of my final questions for you. I'm curious. Running has been a thread throughout your entire life. I'm curious what running means to you now. You just won the Leadville 100. At this stage in your life and in your career, what does this sport mean to you, and what are your goals going forward?
The most important thing for me is to love what I'm doing every day and share that with others. And so for me, it's like I love the connections that I make with others. And that's why I love coaching, right? Like there was almost 2 years ago, I was injured and not doing, like I missed some time and I wasn't competing because I was coming back from an injury. Injuries happen to everyone. It's not a dirty word. Things happen. And like being able to coach was still my connection to the sport. And so I loved being able to just like I'm just full coaching. Like I'm not able to compete right now and I know I'm going to. And same thing with friends, right? Like I said, with the past few years, I wasn't competing in trail, but I loved spending the day with others on the trails. I loved having the adventures with friends, being there to support others with crewing and pacing. And now that I'm doing it, like they can't wait to support me, which is amazing. And also like having my two of my like group of friends from Flagstaff like come out and like support me in my first 100-mile race was like truly so special. Like that was amazing. So for me, racing and running are almost like they're related, right? But they're almost two separate things because I want to love what I do every day. Like it's important for me to love the training, and I truly loved this training like since February. But racing gives your training like direction and kind of like a intention or purpose. But like I also don't need a race on my calendar to want to get out there and do the training and be just like a fit person. So they're related, but they're also separate. And I also think that that's why, for me, like I very quickly get over a bad race because I'm like, it doesn't change what I'm gonna like. I'm gonna go out and like once I recover, like I'm gonna train again. Like, yes, that was a miserable experience, but it also like, the bad days make us so appreciative of the good ones. And so you're never going to just have like a straight trajectory of like all good races. Like you're going to get kicked in the teeth. You're going to have to pick yourself up. And, those rough days are the ones where honestly character is built. And like this sport will test your resiliency if you're competing. And like, it's like, how bad do you want this? Do you want to get back to it? Like that was just a humbling experience, but we all go through that. And so, going forward, like definitely want to do another 100, and also just, explore other race distances and just have a very well-rounded, I would say, ultra career and trail career, also sub ultra too, not just ultra. I think there's like so much joy and excitement in training for a wide variety of distances, and everything is hard. Everything is hard. Like if you are pushing yourself to your limit, like you are going to be working hard and be challenged with whatever distance you do in the sport, road, trail, doesn't matter. Like respect to everyone who lines up for any distance, pushing themselves to their limit, and puts in the work to do that.
You mentioned you want to run 100 miles next year. Do you have an idea of which 100 you want to run?
Well, I would love to, I want to do Western States. And, my intention in racing canyons this past spring was I did want to race my way into Western States. And I did race most of that race, like I said, before I basically died out there, in the 2, like female 2 spot. So I was like running in golden ticket spot. Ultimately, like I said, didn't have the day that I hoped and wanted. I've said this before, things work out the way they're supposed to, because I'm very happy to now, like, I want to do Western States one day. And when I think about going into that race as an experienced 100-miler, that feels like such an advantage, like such a weight off. And I know people, like, such respect to people that that's their debut and it goes well, right? But like, to go into that race already as an experienced 100-miler for me feels like the best case scenario. And I was ready. Like, had I won a golden ticket, I would have accepted it. Like, I would have done the training and like race states this spring. But I feel like this was like, I know this was meant to be my journey and I trust it. And I don't feel like any sort of way about how it played out other than just like grateful. And so I am signed up for Canyons again. I am excited to go back and rewrite my race narrative there. I love that course. I know it really well now. I got the fueling figured out, so I'm very, cautiously optimistic for a better day. And I would say, that's my goal, is to race my way into states, and I would love to do states next year. And if that doesn't work out, I'll figure something else out.
Let's go. From somebody who's obsessed with Western states, it's like really fun to hear that. Is just generally a fan of the sport, but hopefully we'll be towing the line together as states. We'll see where life shakes out. Mary, it's so nice to meet you formally now, and just huge congratulations. We, as a part of the ultra running community, are just so ecstatic about your day and what you're bringing to the sport, and thank you for your energy, and you really are such a light. So thank you, Mary, for joining the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, everybody, what'd you think? Thank you, Mary, for coming on just a couple days after your massive effort at Leadville 100. I thought that was a really fun conversation. I learned a lot from someone who has been running for a long time, and also for people that are just new to running. I think that you're going to come away with that with a lot of new insight, and she just dumped a lot of knowledge. So thank you, Mary. She is open for coaching, so send her a DM. Also, let us know how we did via our social media channels on Instagram, YouTube. Please give us a follow on Spotify or iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, and we hope you join us next time.